Hey, what's up you guys? This is Bro Coder and today we're gonna learn React. So there are great resources that are free online, and one of the places I like to go to just learn new things is Code Academy. It's free. Now there is a freemium model here, so if you want, you can check it out. They just introduced their React classes, so you have part one and part two. We'll go both over both of those. And yeah, React is a great framework. Now, we're gonna start from the beginning. So the first thing is when you hit React 1, this is the first thing that appears, and it talks about React. It says welcome to Introduction of ReactJS Part 1. So React was created by developers by engineers at Facebook. And why is React so popular? And it talks about like being fast, modular, so it's a lot easier to digest, scalable, large programs, flexible, and it is gaining popularity. Though one thing that Code Academy didn't mention is one of the reasons, and this is my opinion, that React is gaining so much traction is because they also have a framework called React Native, and basically you can make native iPhone and Android apps in one shot with React. So here we're learning how to make web apps, but by learning this, you basically learn how to make React native apps. Now there are differences, obviously, but let's start. So let's dive in. So take a look at the following line of code. So here we go. We have the line of code right here. Var h1 is equal to, these look like HTML tags. What's kind of weird about hybrid code is that it is JavaScript, HTML, or something else. So this is actually, they're introducing us to JSX. So this is JSX. So it's still JavaScript, but it is JSX. So first it tells us, hey, copy the following line of code into your app.js. This is our app.js. Copy paste. I already have it on. And hit run. So when it runs, it'll give you a check mark over here. And it looks like it worked. So now we can move on. So next. Great. It says good. Take another look at the line of code you wrote. What does the code belong in? Does this code belong in the JavaScript file, an HTML file, or something else? The answer is the JavaScript file. So this is JavaScript. So it now explains to us that this is something called JSX. The next we'll learn about JSX. So let's go learn. JSX is a syntax extension of JavaScript. It was written and used with React. JSX code looks a lot like HTML. So it does look like HTML tags. But this HTML, this JSX is stored in a variable, which is JavaScript. So H1. What does syntax extension mean? In this case, it means JSX is valid JavaScript. Web browsers cannot read it. If a JavaScript file contains JSX, then the file will have to be compiled. This means that before the file reaches a web browser, JSX compiler will translate this. So basically, you need a program to translate this JSX into vanilla JavaScript so that basically the browser can read it. Okay, let's move on. A basic unit of JSX is called the JSX element. So here's an example of one. So this is a JSX element. This JSX element looks exactly like HTML. The only noticeable difference is that you will find it on a JavaScript file instead of an HTML file. So here's another one. So let's run that puppy and good to go. JSX elements are treated as JavaScript expressions. They can go anywhere that JavaScript expressions can go. So let's move on. So you can store a JSX element with a variable, and you can also put it in an object, which is actually interesting, something I have not yet done in a React app, and that is actually quite useful. Create a JSX article element, save it in a variable name. So we already have done that. So we have my article, which is the variable, and we stored this JSX article. I put hi in between. You can do whatever you want, and let that run. And once it runs, it lets you go on further into the exercise. JSX elements have an attribute, or have attributes, just like HTML. So you can add attributes to your tags, which is useful. So as you can see here, they have an A tag with an href, which is Yahoo, welcome to the Yahoo, and a title with an ID tag of title, Introduction to JSX Part 1. So it tells us, hey, create a variable P1 and P2, put P tags, and put an ID attribute of large and small. So we run that and then move on. You can nest JSX elements inside another JSX element, just like HTML. Here's an example. So you can nest these tags just like HTML. So it is pretty much HTML tags within a JavaScript file. So you can see here another example of that, a little nicer and cleaner to look at. You put it in parentheses, and you can put that in a variable. So here we have done exactly what the instructions have said, which is create a myDiv variable with the div as the outermost tag and h1 within it. I put hello world. It tells us to put hello world as well. You run that and click next. There's a rule that we have not mentioned in JSX expressions that must have exactly one outermost element. So that's something. So in this exercise, we're given just this. So we have an image, an h1, a closing h1, an article, and an article with strong tags in between, and that won't run in React because you don't have it wrapped with one outer div. So how to fix that is just put divs on the top and the bottom so you have it wrapped. So an example of that would be this. So if you take a look at this, there's nothing wrapping these two p tags. But to fix that, you just need to put this div. Now their example has an ID. I am the outermost div element or outermost element. It doesn't have to be a div. It just has to have an outermost element. And now this can run. This cannot. Okay. So that goes on. We keep going. Here you've learned how to write JSX elements. Now it's time to learn how to render them. So in order to render, follow the code, or the following code will render as a JSX expression. React dom.render h1. So that's the first argument, is this JSX, and the second is basically where we want it. So document.getElementById app. So starting on line 5, carefully copy the code into the editor. We'll go over how it works. So essentially we're printing out this var React is equal to require React. So this is just calling upon the React library. This is React DOM, another library you are required to ask for. So essentially things you need to have React work on your app or on this file. React DOM.render. So the first argument is basically the JSX we want to render. So what do we want to render over here, which is hello world. The second is document.get element by ID app. So on our HTML file, there's going to be a tag with an ID of app, and that's the tag. Within that tag, that's where we're going to render this hello world. So this will suddenly appear within that tag. So when we hit run, we have hello world. We'll hit next. I think it'll explain a little bit more. Let's examine the code we just wrote, starting with previous.js. So we go to previous.js. Line 5, you can see something called React DOM. What's that? React DOM is the name of the JavaScript library. So that's so it's the React DOM, and this library contains several React specific methods, all of which deal with the DOM in some way or another. We'll talk more about the React DOM going into your file, but for now, just understand that it's yours to use. Move slightly to the right, and you can see one of React's methods, react.render. So render. React.render is most common way to render JSX. It takes a JSX expression, creates a corresponding tree of the DOM nodes, and adds the tree to the DOM. This is the way that to make a JSX expression appear on the screen. Move to the right a little more, and you come to the expression hello world. This is the first argument being passed to the react.render. React.render's first argument should be a JSX expression, and it will be rendered to the screen. We'll discuss the second argument in the second exercise. So here we're just rendering render me on the app or on the HTML. So get element in the app with the element ID of app. So let's move on. So move to the right a little more, and you'll see the expression document.get element by ID. You just learned that React DOM.render makes its first argument appear on the screen, but where on the screen should the first argument appear? The first argument is appended to whatever element is selected by the second argument. In the code editor, select index.html. Select index.html. So let's see that. If you can find the element find an element that would be selected by that. So let's take a look at the body, and right now I don't see where it's rendering, and I think it's because we changed it. But this span used to be this main ID. So it used to be main ID app, and that's how it render me. So you can see main ID app. It says replace. That's why it's replaced already, because we already did that. And now we have to go back to app.js, and you can see that now it's a container. That's why it's rendering, because now it's rendering an ID container, which we changed from main ID equals app to span. So now let's move on. So here they want us to make a to-do list. Essentially, they want us to put some JSX with a variable, and that's what we did. And that's what's here. So this is the JSX I created. It's stored with my list. And now, instead of putting the JSX directly in here, we just put the variable name. So it looks a lot cleaner. And much more modularized in that way. I mean, that's not really technically modularized. I just mean it looks cleaner because you have all your JSX here, and then you have it rendering here. So we have it, we're running it, and it says, "Hi, I'm Carlo," and yeah. So now we hit next. One special thing about React DOM render is that it only updates the DOM elements that have changed. That means if you render the exact same thing twice in a row, the second render will do nothing. So if it's the same exact thing, it won't do anything. This is significant, only updating necessary. That's basically what makes React super fast, because it only updates things that have changed, not things that are exactly the same. It just won't touch it. So congratulations. So that's the first step of our course, and thank you so much for following through. And we'll see you in the next course.